I'm Bo, and you're in the loop. The former Tory MP Andrew Bridgen has been permanently expelled from the Conservative Party. He already had the Tory whip removed in January after a tweet comparing COVID vaccines to the Holocaust. Meanwhile, Chris Pincher, the MP whose conduct kick-started the end of Boris Johnson's time as Prime Minister, is standing down at the next election. He was also suspended from his party last July. That was following an accusation of assault. The government's hit its target to take on 20,000 police officers in England and Wales, bringing levels back to where they were before austerity. But the Home Secretary insists they've not achieved that number by lowering standards. Suella Braverman denies reports that some applicants were invited back after failing their initial tests. Labour's Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says the recruitment drive shouldn't have been needed at all.
Where are the Tories pretending to have been for the last 13 years? They cut 20,000 police officers. Belatedly, they set a target to patch up their own cuts, and now they want us all to be grateful.
We'll be discussing this more in depth on Youth Choice Voice. And finally, it's understood the King has turned down an offer from Heathrow to have Terminal 5 named after him. A source has told The Times it's due to environmental considerations. The paper says instead the airport will mark the coronation with a commemorative luggage tag. And your 5-word weather: light cloud and gentle breeze. That's your Loop News Roundup. More in an hour.
In 2019, the Conservative government promised 20,000 extra officers. Home Secretary Suella Braverman claims they have hit that goal. But does it even matter anymore? Do you even trust the police?
How much? I'm sure you've said that in the last year. Stocked cupboards and stocks and shares. What is going on in our supermarkets?
And how many minions took part in the marathon? Running 26 miles through London is crazy as it is, but the costumes make it crazier still.
What do we think of Tottenham? Well, I can't repeat that on the end of the chant. But what is going on in North London? There's a lot of bad owners and corruption in football. Let's kick it off.
I'm Yaman.
I'm Alex.
I'm Anousha.
And I'm Stanley.
Last Sunday, 30 years ago, Stephen Lawrence, a black British teenager from Plumstead, South London, or South East London, if you want to be more, specific about it, was murdered in a racially motivated attack while waiting for a bus. And I'm not going to go into the, Wikipedia details of it, because I'm sure most of you, and I know Stanley, Anousha, and Alex, you all are very well aware of this story. He was murdered by waiting for the bus stop when he was 18 years old. Okay? The case was taken, to law, and after initial investigation, 6 suspects were arrested but not charged. A private prosecution subsequently initiated by Lawrence's family failed to secure convictions for any of those accused. It was suggested that during the investigation that Lawrence was killed because he was black, right? Because he was standing at the bus stop and the 2 people that had attacked him were of a white background and they, chose him because of his race. And that the handling of the case by the police and Crown Prosecution Services was affected by issues of race. Now, and this is the reason why I've started all of this, and I know some of you might be bored already thinking, Yaman, what are you on about? And this was last Sunday, so why are you talking about it on Wednesday? Well, and I'll get to it, just listen up. A 1998 public inquiry, headed by Sir William Macpherson, examined the original Metropolitan Police Service, the MPS as it was known back then, investigation, and concluded that the investigation was incompetent and that the force was institutionally racist. Fast forward 26 years after this attack on Stephen Lawrence. Now remember, 1998 public inquiry found that the Metropolitan Police Service was institutionally racist. 26 years later, the Conservative government are running for the elections, headed by Boris Johnson back then. It was Theresa May. We've had too many Conservative
We've had a lot of
prime ministers in the last 4 years, but I'm pretty sure it was Theresa May against Jeremy Corbyn. And in Theresa May's manifesto in 2019, the Conservative Party promised that there would be 20,000 new police officers on the streets whilst they're in charge. Now, they didn't really put a deadline to this, but they've seemed to have hit that deadline today, okay? Now, the total number of police officers has reached just about 150,000 in total. And this was a part of the Conservative 2019 election manifesto. And the reason why I mentioned Stephen Lawrence's death, which was 4 years ago, and I think 30 years ago, and the manifesto was announced 4 years ago, and what I want to open the conversation with is that we've had this kid who was killed because of his race, and it was found that the police service had some forms of institutional racism in it. Now, of course, this was in 1998. Things, and I know some of you might be prepared to argue that things have changed. In 2019, the Conservative government pledged to add 20,000 new officers, right? It's 2023. This morning, Suella Braverman came on LBC and spoke to Nick Ferrari on breakfast and claimed basically confirmed, because the claims are correct, that we've had that goal being hit. Now, finally, I want to end my timeline with the very last 5 recent controversies that have happened with the Met Police. But before I speak about them, I want to open the room for this question for you guys. And it's that, considering the institution, the organization was found to have forms of racism in it, and there's now more police on the streets. But then you've got things like this, where you've got 9 officers investigated over offensive messages. This is the Gwent Police. Then you've got the Met Police officers sacked over Katie Price's, over the messages about Katie Price's son, Harvey Price. I'm sure you've seen or heard about them, and we can discuss them more in depth. You've got the former Cambridgeshire police officer guilty of raping a girl. You've got Greater Manchester police officers barred over offensive messages. And then you've got a Reading police officer, this is local to you, Anousha, Reading police officer charged with threat and harassment, right? This is all very recently. And then you've got, instead of, my problem is here, which is why I want to speak to you guys about this, is that instead of getting these police officers fixed that are already on the streets, you've added more. Is this the solution? Do you think people even trust the police anymore with all of this going on? So instead of you fixing the ones that you already have, you're adding more to the, it's like having a basket of rotten apples, and instead of getting rid of that basket and getting a new set, you've just added more apples that are eventually going to become rotten because they're just around a bunch of more other rotten apples. Let me know what you guys are thinking.
Well, hang on. A lovely monologue there. I mean, welcome to Youth Choice Voice. First of all, we didn't really intro the
They know what they're tuned into,
No,
Stanley.
come on,
Let's
we've
get
got
into
to-
the hard facts.
No, come on. Brilliant monologue, Yaman.
Let's get into the hard
No,
facts,
this is
Stanley.
Youth
What do we
Choice
do
Voice.
about the police?
No, I just wanted to have a little intro. We didn't really intro. We came straight in with the hard topics. But yes, we're going to be speaking about all the tough topics here. But yeah, it's a tough one.
I'm gonna come in off of the back of what Yaman said, and policing in this country has very quickly become one of the most controversial topics you can discuss
Rapidly.
But the thing with policing is it is incredibly prevalent in all our lives. Prior to the show, we were discussing that if something goes wrong, there is no one to call but the police. In a lot of cases, obviously there are charities which help with specific things, but if
Unless you're in a gang, and then you're going to call up your gang members. But
trying to avoid that,
that is definitely not the legal option
Yeah.
or not the wise option to do in such difficult times.
Yeah, but obviously you're going to call the police in a lot of cases because you have no other alternative. Whether you think there should or there shouldn't be another alternative. Area. It's improving rapidly. Diversity in the police force is improving, and these new hires have helped with that adjustment. But the question is not necessarily about the people that occupy the police. It's about the structure of the police, the how thorough the police's hiring protocol is. There's some serious questions about that. Obviously, one of the stories was we're going to go into greater detail, but. Wayne Couzens, who was responsible for the murder of Sarah Everard last year, which is incredibly sad, was previously had been, people were aware of a indecent exposure charge brought against him, and he still continued to serve as a police officer. So is there this disconnect where politicians are desperate for more police officers? But in all honesty, we believe we've got too many. 149,000. So 150,000 people are police officers in this country. That's a huge number. If you've ever seen anywhere near that many people in real life.
But do you know what else is rising? And because I want to give space for Anousha and Stanley to speak on this as well. The total knife offences in London London, for example, are rising. So, along with police rising, you've got crime rising. So, what would you do if you were Braverman, if you were Rishi Sunak, I guess? Because a lot of the time, I think, and I've had some people listen to the show, and they're like, "Oh, you guys are young. You guys wouldn't have a clue if you were in their feet. If you were the prime minister, you would just be, you'd resign like Liz Truss did." So. What would you do, Anousha, about this if you were the prime minister? This is a.
I mean, I'm gonna kind of gloss over that question for a second because I just want to bring up what you were saying about bad apples. You kind of touched on it. I think there are going to be people looking at this piece of news. We've got 20,000 new police officers and thinking, great, that's 20,000 more people that I can't trust. I mean, if you're getting. It's not even just, the police officers aren't dealing with the crimes that are committed by normal people. You've got the police officers committing the crimes themselves. I mean, who are we supposed to trust? As Alex said, who else can I call if I'm, walking home alone at night, there isn't anyone there? I've got to ring the police. But is the Cambridgeshire police officer going to go and then rape me? I don't feel that people are going to be particularly happy with Suella Braverman kind of saying, oh, look, yes, we've delivered on our promise. Great, but what about the people that are actually being victims of the police force? Is there going to be any change to how members of the police force are dealt with? How, I don't know, their psychological assessments? Or is it just great, we've got 20,000 more people and we're not going to change anything else?
And it's important to keep in mind, these are the complete, the shallowest surface level of these stories. These are all of the people that have had major crimes commit. These stories you hear about the police committing crimes are the extremes. And, as you work down, you've got to think about all of the people who are assaulted by police officers, but physically, violently, maybe sexually, not to an extreme, perhaps. Not there's any such thing.
But you see,
people will not go to the police with these stories, but they may not also go to the media, and that's a shame because it doesn't give us a very well-rounded understanding. Obviously, you also don't hear about all the fantastic things the police do, and I'm by no means...
And I'm glad you mentioned this, because I feel like when I was listening to Suella this morning, I was frustrated that the fact that she wasn't really focusing on the highlights in terms of the problems with the police, but she was trying to explain I'm not going to tell you what she said. Let's have a listen to what Suella Braverman had to speak with Nick Ferrari this morning.
We have extensive vetting procedures already in place. That's why we allocated £3 billion to support this unprecedented recruitment campaign. But if I can say a bit about vetting, it's quite an extensive process. There are quite wide-ranging checks that are carried out on any applicant before they're accepted into the police force. Checks on convictions and cautions, financial checks, checks on relatives and associates. That can take several weeks, and we do have a quite high degree of selectivity when it comes to recruiting. If you look at the application numbers, for every 10 applicants, only one will be successful and actually get through all the hoops that we present to them. So there is quite a high level of rigour that is applied in the recruitment and vetting process. That being said, I'm obviously cognizant of the challenges and the tragic stories and episodes that we've seen recently. And that's why I've instructed the College of Policing to update its guidance on vetting, and we're we're reviewing processes, we're washing data against the Police National Database. We're doing a whole load of things to reassure ourselves again and again that those who are not fit to wear the badge are no longer in the police.
See, she talks about rigor, and she talks about the force being rigorous, or at least getting into the force being rigorous. I feel like it's a very difficult one to address, and I do want to come back to it after this next song, but just really quickly, in 10 seconds, Stanley, what do you think of what we've talked about so far?
I mean, I have a lot to say, and I think I'll say it after what we're doing, but a quick summary. I mean, yeah, like what Alex said, there's a lot of really amazing things that the police do, and I think some people will take that the bad things and overshadow what some of the police things that does. There's some great stories here that I'll go through after this, but we're gonna have some music now, aren't we?
Yeah, but before we get to the music, Anousha, in 10 seconds, what do you think?
I don't know. I think Suella saying that there's a whole bunch of things they're doing is quite vague, but we'll see.
Alex Short.
Yeah, I mean, I've got so much to say after, so keep on listening, guys. We're going to be talking about what Suella just said.
Yeah, we're not going to go anywhere, but first up, this is Miss You on Youth Choice.
Leading the youth's conversation. This is Youth Choice Voice. Youth's Choice Voice.
Kendrick Lamar with Swimming Pools there.
On Youth's Choice.
Great song.
What a great song. But now we are back to a bit more. I mean, the song, to be fair, the song, if I'm correct, and Alex, you're going to be more sure about this, isn't it about corruption in America? With
No. So Swimming Pools is actually about alcoholism.
Yes.
The song about corruption. Well, there's a handful of songs. Good Kid, Mad City. Anyway,
Kendrick Lamar is a great artist.
Pulitzer Prize winning poet.
You know what I mean?
Really?
To have
Wow.
yeah. This is not a joke. Like to to have his song play, and I promise you guys, yes, this is scheduled music, but it seemed to. I'm pretty sure Rochelle, you didn't put this in on purpose, did you?
Rochelle's Rochelle in charge of what song plays. She's the DJ.
Rochelle is the DJ here today, and she didn't put this in on purpose. And Kendrick Lamar, him playing and him being such an outspoken voice, especially with police violence,
arguably from the most renowned place in the world,
Compton,
for
yeah,
police violence.
LA, poetic in my opinion.
The place that put police
back
violence
to
on the map.
the Metropolitan Police here and our problems with them. What my problem with them? You guys might not find the same point of view as I do. And Stanley, what's your opinion?
Well, I mean, as I said before, I'm just going to continue with what I was saying. I mean, Alex spoke a lot about how the police are seen and how they're represented in this country, and it comes from we're coming at a really negative point, obviously, because of all the bad things that have happened to the police. And it is unfortunate, like Anousha said, 20,000, and how do we know that all 20,000 of them will be good or a couple will be bad? And I know a couple of them, it really overshadows when you have 20,000 and then one of them does something bad. That really overshadows the whole process, and it could be seen as a bad thing to bring in 20,000 people and then be bad. But then again, we also have to look at it from a point of that's 20,000 more people who are going to be on the streets. And
let's say if you bring in 20,000 people and one of them is bad, if it's
one out of 20 or 5 out of 20, yes, that's bad. But also, again,
that's 5 good people.
That's
20 good people.
There are some incredible police officers that have done things and put themselves on the line and died for this country. And sometimes you don't hear about that side of it because obviously, and it is fair enough to hear the bad stuff, but there are some incredible stories of it. There's one here that I'm reading. It's a suicidal teenager was persuaded off a cliff edge. I don't think I don't think most of us could have. I think
praising the police
it's a tough one. It is. I know. I understand, but again,
it is their job, Stan.
It is
just a reminder. It's like me
paid.
praising you for presenting this show,
but you're not getting paid.
You're not getting paid. Zero budget, guys. If you want to sponsor us, just hit us up at Youth Choice GA.
What I'm saying is that I don't think that in the police jobs role it has because you have to persuading someone not to jump off a cliff. That's not. I don't think that's in the police handbook. I don't think that's a thing that when they
negotiation
signed up,
things.
I mean, we can check that.
I know, but that is.
Can we check that?
That is a very hard thing to do. Is to persuading someone to not commit suicide.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the police do good things, and I mean that's a great example.
Is that a part of school police, duty? Yeah.
Their duty at the end of the day is to keep the public safe, and that's an example where that has been achieved. So that's really great. I think it's just it's not even a case of, people think when there's so many negatives and on such a big scale, it becomes difficult. And again, even with our government as well, it's the government oversees the Metropolitan Police. So if we can't trust the government, that kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to the police as well. So I think maybe people's hatred for the current government is running over.
Don't get me wrong. I've had some lovely interactions with a lot of police officers, actually. I remember when we were in year 7, me and my friends, when it comes to the summer, year 7, 8, or throughout high school, we'd start buying water balloons, we'd fill them up, and we'd start throwing them at each other in our school uniforms just after school. It's July, everyone's in a great mood. But what we would do as well, which was wrong, we would do it outside of people's houses, and a few times the balloons would hit people's windows and doors, and that led to us having to be spoken by police officers before. And what they did the first time they were like, you can't be doing this, you're disturbing people, and it's antisocial behavior, really, ASBO as they call it. So we came back the next week and we did it again, but this time the police officer, and I still remember how Constable Jones, I've got a selfie with her on my Twitter, she came up to me and she was like, yeah man, why don't you guys just play somewhere else? And to be honest, we weren't really sure of the area around that high school back then. because we didn't live around there, and then she escorted us to like this park nearby, and actually she grabbed a water balloon and she offered to play with us as well. And of course, like, you know, we had to approve first. Like, she wasn't a police officer wasn't just gonna grab a water balloon and dash it at a kid.
Good thing you didn't call the fire department. That's a bit extreme.
No, we're not gonna have a water fight with the fire extinguisher.
I was going to say, this is going to sound really crass, but at least with 20,000 more police officers, I mean, if 20,000 people in a water balloon fight would be pretty epic.
That would be pretty cool.
I think it will be pretty epic. So yeah, good interactions, you can definitely have them. But I'm afraid, Stanley, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know why I'm attacking you for this. I'm not saying...
No, I'm just trying to put like a more positive spin on it.
Because if you do see a basket with rotten apples in it, no matter how many times, you're always going to remember the rotten apples unless you get a new basket. That's my, premise, I guess.
I mean, I understand that, but and again, I know you said it's their job, but it is a very, very difficult job. It's a very, and I don't think I could ever be could any of you ever be a police officer? Alex, mate?
No, I couldn't be a police officer.
Could you be a police officer, Anousha?
No.
I think that sort of role, and yes, 20,000 and they're recruiting more, and I think it's harder, but I think that role is you have to be an incredible human being to try that role. And yes, there are some idiots in the police force, but then again, it's a very tough role. They're literally putting their lives on the line for the safety of the public. And yes, there are some bad stuff, but it is a tough role. And I know, as you say, it's their job. It's their job. Yes, it is their job. They've signed up for that. They have signed up for that. But in the meantime,
it's crazy,
it's a very tough role.
So to be, this is how badly, I guess the Conservative Party thought that police officers, or think police officers are needed. When you think of apprenticeships, right? So not going to university, which is something that the government has been pushing and funding heavily recently.
Incredibly heavily. They're almost pulling people away from university with apprenticeships.
I'm trying to think of a good example of an apprenticeship that pays not very high. For example, if you were to become a plumbing apprentice, right? You're likely to do a level 4, whatever.
And that's full time. That is full time, overtime.
40 hours a week, maybe. And what are you going to get out of it? 20,000 at the end of the year, oddly, maximum. To be a police officer, if you join on the apprenticeship program, it starts at 26,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that could be
life-changing
life-changing money.
About never being a police officer, then.
And I get it. Like, I'll be in the mosque on Friday when I'm praying in central London, and the Met will actually have a stand in the mosque, actively encouraging young people to join them, especially of these different backgrounds, because you feel like they are trying a little bit. They are trying to be more diverse. They are trying to be a bit more inclusive. But I feel like if you're still stuck with people very high at the top, you've got senior chief constables that are committing allegations, etc., then there's no point. If you've got a few, black officers and Asian officers down the ranks to show that you're diverse and inclusive, I just don't think it's going to impact society as much as it could.
I actually think that brings me on nicely to what I've been thinking, what I've decided. I think this whole more approach to policing is actually an issue. Obviously, in times of economic downturn, crime increases, and the Conservative Party, as part of their manifestos, have said we are tough on crime. But in an ideal world, you don't have more police officers to deal with crime. You have more police officers, and you have a couple police officers. You have more social workers. You have more charity workers. You have more ambulance drivers. You have all the things that don't actively deal with crime because you don't want as much crime.
So speaking of that, Sienna just brought up what Stanley was talking about earlier. Commitment to a joint strategy to reduce in the number of deaths by suicide across the police service in England and Wales has been agreed in a consensus statement supported by the College of Policing, National Police Chiefs Council, Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. So it's not a part of their job role, but all of the unions, all of the organizations have agreed that it's kind of the morally right thing to do. If you're a police officer, see someone that's about to commit suicide, then of course you're gonna
absolutely as should anyone. I think there should almost be a base negotiation training taught in school, that if you are put in that situation, you should be able to help.
Just so the listeners are aware, because I know that this can be a touchy subject, help is always available regardless if it's with the police or not. You can call Samaritans on 116123. You can text SHOUT to 852 58, and you can always contact the NHS, or you can contact the police themselves, and you can contact 988, which is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. So if you are at all feeling even a little bit sad, or things aren't at 100%, always know that help is out there and someone is always willing to listen. I think it's just an emphasis here, because police are there to help, but so is everyone around us.
Everyone around you, everyone you're friends with wants to help.
It's a strong point to make there, but I just want to come up with an overall agreement. But I am really intrigued to know the answer to this, because we have acknowledged a few issues within the police, but a few good scenarios as well. If you were Prime Ministers, and Alex Shaw, I want you to begin with your answer. If you were Prime Minister, what would you do about the police?
I'd lead my argument with reducing crime. I wouldn't say I'm hiring more police officers, because police officers is an arguable thing. No one wants more crime. Not everyone wants more police officers. So, I don't think that should be what they're pushing.
That's a line there. Need to put that on a
little
little banner. Say that again.
Yeah.
I'd say not everybody wants more police officers. Nobody wants more crime.
Yeah. Nobody does want more crime.
Hiring more police officers and making a big deal about that, I don't think is the correct way to go about it. I think if you have to hire police officers on a logistics side, yes, do it. But don't advertise with that, because police officers aren't a good thing in everyone's eyes. And hearing your government say, "Oh, we've put more of these people you don't like on the streets," isn't going to make you happier. And when people aren't happy, they're more inclined to commit a crime.
Stanley,
Alex raised a good point. I would go with the more sense of not just hiring more, but the vetting process they do and the background checks that they do and all these things should be a bit more tighter.
Well, that's what Suella's claiming.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to go back to what Suella said, because from what I concluded, she said they're going to review police testing and make the process more rigorous.
The vetting
process better. But they've just hired 20,000 police officers.
Yeah.
Have they gone through the old vetting process? I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'd like to get some confirmation on that.
Let's have a listen back again to that Suella clip. Let's just clarify what she said there before Anousha tells us what she would do if she was a Prime Minister. Let's have a listen to the Home Secretary, who was on Nick Ferrari this morning at breakfast, and she spoke to him about the recruitment and training of new police.
Okay, I don't think we have that clip ready,
we
so
have extensive vetting procedures already in place. That's why we allocated £3 billion to support this unprecedented recruitment campaign. But if I can say a bit about vetting, it's quite an extensive process. There are quite wide-ranging checks that are carried out on any applicant before they're accepted into the police force. Checks on convictions and cautions, financial checks, checks on relatives and associates. That can take several weeks, and we do have a quite high degree of selectivity when it comes to recruiting. If you look at the application numbers, for every 10 applicants, only one will be successful and actually get through all the hoops that we present to them. So there is quite a high level of rigour that is applied in the recruitment and vetting process. That being said, I'm obviously cognizant of the challenges and the tragic stories and episodes that we've seen recently. And that's why I've instructed the College of Policing to update its guidance on vetting, and we're we're reviewing processes, we're washing data against the Police National Database. We're doing a whole load of things to reassure ourselves again and again that those who are not fit to wear the badge are no longer in the police.
Not fit to wear the badge. You don't want Lucas Ross to hear that with his obsession of Stone Islands. If you heard about getting the badge in, then you would know what I'm talking about. It's just interesting, her language. Obviously cognizant. Now, she claims that the vetting is going to get better with training the new police officers. Anousha, what do you think? If you were Prime Minister, what would you do?
Well, I think if I was Prime Minister, I'd probably try to make sure that my Home Secretary sounded a little bit more convincing going on LBC radio. She's talking about checks. She's talking about a number of weeks. I was zoning out. I'm not going to lie. When she was talking to you, I was zoning out. I think it's about having everybody in your party on side, everyone in the Met on side. The public needs to be on side. So if, a member of my party was appearing on radio and just said, checks, waffling a bit, I don't think I'd be very happy. I think it's about coming together. Hopefully, if I was PM, you guys would all be backing me. And I think it's about bringing everyone's ideas together and creating a solution that works and is quick.
Stay tuned.
leading the youth's conversation. This is Youth's Choice Voice.
Come, Mr. DJ.